Good morning, folks. Everything new under the sun. This video is going to be about, well, partly about the stock market, but also about why an economic collapse kind of has to happen before other Bible prophecy is fulfilled. Now, we know about Bible prophecy about the millennial reign of Christ. That is going to be 1,000 years of time when Christ is ruling and reigning on earth, and we who are Christians now will rule and reign with Christ during that period. So we're not going to see a mark of the beast system, the Antichrist system, etc., come out during the millennial reign of Christ. That means it must happen prior to the end of the 6,000 years of man. And I also believe that an economic collapse is really what kicks off Ezekiel 38 and comes prior to the 7-year tribulation and the Antichrist, and maybe even the Antichrist is around or in a significant leadership position while the economic collapse is occurring. And so this is a chart that I've used in the past, and it says the first arrow, which you can't really see, says we are here. Let me see if I can. There. It says we are here, top left corner. And I have the economic collapse somewhere in and around. Well, I can't move it, but somewhere in and around. Let me move this. Somewhere in and around Isaiah 17, Ezekiel 38. And so where do I get that from? Where do I get that idea? Well, I added a new slide, and it's kind of the two proof passages, text, I'm sure there's more, about why the economic collapse must come first. But first, let me take you to, let's go to, let's see, what I want to show you here. Look at this. Look at the stock markets. The Dow futures are down nearly 400 points. Dow is set for 400-point loss after 3 million Caterpillar earnings disappoint. That's a huge amount for the Dow futures to be down, so you can expect some even more significant volatility when the markets do open. We're going to take a couple of articles related to this, but scripturally, how does this line up? Well, like I say, I think, and I've said it before, I think an economic collapse is what comes prior to, maybe just prior to, we don't know the exact timing, but let's pull this up here. And this is my slide. This is at least two proof texts I have right now. So we know Ezekiel 38 is going to be coming down the pipe. Most scholars believe that it's going to happen prior to, it's going to be one of the wars where happening in the Middle East that occurs that leads to the Antichrist bringing in peace and security, just like the Bible says, for 7 years in the Middle East, and the whole world rejoices because they think they had peace. Now, the whole world isn't going to rejoice if there is no war already happening, something they're not, they don't want to stop. If it's already peaceful in most of the world, why will most of the world care about a peace treaty and a new worldwide currency? So, Ezekiel 38 says this. In it, it speaks of the Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish, which are the offspring of Britain, effectively. So the colonies, you talk about the Commonwealth countries, Australia, Canada, the United States is one. And which of those offspring of the merchants of Tarshish are world superpowers? Well, one right now, the United States. And if all of this Bible prophecy is to be fulfilled, and there is no United States mentioned in Ezekiel 38, they must have collapsed prior to that. So it says, with all the young lions thereof, of Tarshish that is, all the young lions, all the offspring, all the Commonwealth nations of Britain, effectively, art thou come to take a spoil? That's what they say. Thou hast gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold. So they're basically saying to Gog, Ezekiel 38, the alliance of nations, why have you invaded Israel? Have you come to spoil the riches? And that's exactly what they're going for, the oil and the riches that Israel has. But you notice they're not going to war. They're just saying stuff, but they're not actually defending Israel at that point in time. I take that to mean that the United States, as a world superpower as it stands right now, they would defend Israel right now if something happened, if they could. But I take this to mean that they cannot. They physically cannot at that time. What causes that? The only thing that could cause that is a worldwide economic collapse. Excuse me, just had to clear my throat there. So this Ezekiel 38 seems to indicate that the United States is nowhere near to be found, and many believe that Ezekiel 38 happens prior to the 7-year tribulation. So based on this, what would we expect to happen? Well, we expect an economic collapse to happen prior to Ezekiel 38. That's kind of what I'm deducing from the absence of the current world superpower in this battle spoken of in Ezekiel 38-39. What's the next text? Revelation 13. It's about the beast, and he exercises all power of the first beast before him, and causes cause the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth. Who's going to deceive us? The Antichrist, the one who, the false prophet, the one who sets up the peace treaty, the 7-year tribulation, enforces it, who will be possessed by Satan effectively in these last days. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. The image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And then it speaks of the mark of the beast. Now this is a situation where we talk about a new monetary system, a new world fiat currency system. And this has to happen prior to the 7-year tribulation, because this is what causes the whole world to take on a new fiat currency system, so that the Antichrist can track and persecute Christians and everybody who doesn't bow down. Basically, that's not in place yet, and the world reserve currency currently is the United States greenback, based on the petrodollar. Right. So this is this scripture to be fulfilled. Has to happen prior to the end of 6,000 years of man, and I believe, and it is brought in by the Antichrist, and likely this is right at the turning point, right at the start of the 7-year tribulation, or maybe just before it. And he causeth all, both great and small, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man may buy or sell save he that has a mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. There's an article recently, let me see, I'll just pull this up real quick, that Sweden is microchipping. I'll just diverge quickly. Let me see if I can find this one here. Sweden. Swedish are microchipping themselves by the thousands. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick so you can see it. Here is an article from shtfplan.com. The Swedish are microchipping themselves by the thousands. Thousands of people in Sweden are microchipping themselves in an effort to speed up their day. So it comes out of the need to speed up their day, be more efficient. Of course, they don't realize that ultimately this will be controlled by a one-world government spoken of in Bible prophecy. And all this has to come into effect, basically, I believe, in and around Ezekiel 38, which is kind of the reason that the whole world is calling for peace, and gives a mandate to the Antichrist figure to bring in peace and to bring in a new world economy and a fiat currency system. The world will not ask for a new fiat currencies, world reserve currency system, if the existing one hasn't collapsed yet. So, to me, the economic collapse happens before Ezekiel 38. And those are the kind of the two proof tests, and I could probably work through those a bit more. But let's go look at the chart then, based on that. If that is true, then the economic collapse here seems to be gearing up significantly in 2018. Now, that doesn't mean 2018 is the economic collapse, but the gyrations are getting bigger and louder. The birth pains, they're increasing in frequency and intensity. The ups and downs in the stock market are increasing in general, like I say, in frequency and intensity. Not only that, you have war, rumors of war, like with Saudi Arabia threatening to increase the price of a barrel of oil. You also have these natural disasters, like in the U.S., which is costing billions and billions of dollars, which takes a hit on the economy, no doubt, because a lot of money is lost. A lot of people are probably going to go bankrupt from this. So there is a short economic boom from it as people rebuild, but ultimately that boom is due to a whole bunch of credit that people have taken out, effectively more debt, and the economy can't sustain more debt. So if we see the economic collapse gearing up right now, how close are we to Ezekiel 38? I think as soon as the economic collapse happens, I think Isaiah 17 and Ezekiel 38 happen in rapid succession. If we see the economic collapse starting now and gearing up, how close are we to Ezekiel 38? And then how close are we to the 7-year tribulation? I still suspect that the 7-year tribulation starts around 2021. That's why I think we have less than 2 years. I think we're going to see some large swings up and down through the end of this year. Some ones that maybe worry investors significantly, leading up to maybe the end of next year is when it really kicks off. And then we see some of these prophetic battles. Gives some of these prophetic battles time to work through, for these wars to occur, for the economy to fully collapse, for the situation to get so dire with famine and such that the whole world is calling for peace and security and a new world currency, so much so that they give a mandate, a wide swath mandate, to an Antichrist figure spoken of in Revelation 13, to create a peace treaty, to create a new world currency, and it's not going to be called the mark of the beast. I don't know what they'll call it, but the Bible refers to it as the mark of the beast system. People in Sweden apparently are getting ready for this. So all that to lead into the actual articles that I want to look at, because I think it sets the playing field for where we are in Bible prophecy. So let's look at the markets. The markets are down 359 points right now, Dow futures. Incredible. Let's look at, let's see. Drowning in a sea of red, global markets plunge as European tech stocks crash. Chinese rout returns. So, of course, we had a bump yesterday from the Chinese stocks, but now, apparently this was a dead cat bounce. Yesterday morning, Morgan Stanley declared that the dead cat bounce is over one day. Later, the bank's thesis was confirmed with global markets a sea of red on Tuesday as a violent rout in Asia carried over into Europe, slamming tech and industrial stocks, crossing the Atlantic, setting U.S. equity futures, which is what we see right now, retesting the lowest level hit during the October 10-11 two-day rout. Selling escalated from Wall Street into heavy sell-off in Asia before hitting Europe, and all we need is confidence to be eroded and lost in the markets for people to panic. That's what happened in 1929. What triggered 1929 was economic trade war. That's what triggered it. Watch my video about what caused 1929, the Great Depression. And then from there, confidence is generally lost, and people get panicky and skittish, and especially with all the electronically traded funds, all the computers, the algorithms that run the system, if the computer starts to panic, the computer's just going to start dumping everything as fast as it can. And that's going to be even worse. That's going to cause this economic collapse to happen even faster, even if the humans aren't panicking as much. Let's take a look at this article here. CNBC, Dow is set for a 400-point loss. U.S. stock futures pointed to a deeply negative open Tuesday morning. Caterpillar disappointed investors. Shares of 3 million fell more than 5% in pre-market after quarterly earnings and revenue missed expectations. Notice this, the company also trimmed outlook. So they're also seeing a harder economy to be working in and a decrease of revenue going forward. Netflix dropped 2.3% in pre-market trading. Amazon, Nvidia, Alphabet, Twitter shares were also open to set lower as investors worry about valuations for high-flying technology stocks. Bank of America declined 1.4% before the bell. The banks are even going down. People are even pulling out of the banks. You know, if you're looking for a solid investment, the banks generally are good places to be because they always make money. They make sure they make money, but that is down. Today is a big day for corporate earnings with McDonald's, 3M, Caterpillar, and a number of other firms set to report before the bell, and Juniper Networks, Equity Residential, and Capital One. How will these affect it? This is the busiest week of earnings season of the earnings season, rather, with more than 150 members of the S&P 500 set to report. U.S. corporate earnings season has started with more of a whimper than a bang. So the end is not yet. It's down 400 points. We'll see what the earnings do. Are they going to come out and show that they earned a whole bunch? But look at this connection to the whole Khashoggi thing, Saudi Arabia. Geopolitical events are all directly tied in with the stock markets. And why is this important? Well, that's because the Bible speaks that these things are all tied together. Investor focus is largely attuned to development in Saudi Arabia after the country confirmed Khashoggi was killed in the country's consulate in Istanbul, Turkey. So people are skittish and worried. Confidence is being lost in the markets because they see what's happening in the geopolitical situation. They see that the price of oil could be skyrocketing. They see wars, rumors of wars, which is exactly what's happening in the Middle East. And all these things are spoken of in Bible prophecy. The economic collapse, I believe it's effectively alluded to with the fact that in Revelation 13, the beast causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand and foreheads. This is a new monetary system. This is not the U.S. dollar world reserve currency. That apparently is done away with. Something happens to that prior to this coming into place. So what happens? I think in economic collapse, we look at the timeline. I believe we are seeing the gyrations now. I believe the economic collapse happens before Ezekiel 38. Ezekiel 38 is kind of the last big war that happens that causes all people of the world who are starving. Not only starving, there's no peace on the earth, and so people give a mandate to this Antichrist figure, this one world leader. They give a mandate to him and a world government, a large mandate and a lot of power to implement, to enforce, to bring in a peace treaty with Israel and the nations surrounding for 7 years. And this rolls in the 7-year tribulation. So the timeline of events, I believe, as the Bible seems to indicate to me, economic collapse, we see that coming now. Ezekiel 38, that's all in place. There's nothing left. They are ready to go. Russia is in Syria with strength. They are ready to go. They've got surface-to-air missile systems, radar jamming systems, aircraft, and military personnel on the ground. They're ready to invade. All they're looking for is the last hook in the jaw to pull them around. So that Ezekiel 38 is ready to go, no doubt about it. Isaiah 17, Israel could be getting a little worried about its options and could resort to nuclear weapons if it thinks it doesn't have any other option. Remember, the enemies around Israel are an existential threat to Israel. That means that they threaten the existence of Israel. If Israel is running out of options, easy ways to strike and get rid of existing missile factories and missile shipments, which they are restricted now, they may resort to something more. Israel now knows that Iran is setting up missile factories in Lebanon. That's the latest information. That's what Iran's been doing in the 30 days or so that Israel hasn't done a strike inside Syria because of all the new S-300 systems. We haven't seen a strike yet. It's going to be interesting to see. Is the F-35 actually able to evade the S-300? We don't know that yet. We haven't seen a direct conflict there while the Russians were in control of the missile defense system. So Israel could be, and they will run out of power in the last days because they will call on God in the last days, and they're going to be pushed to it. The IDF will not be able to withstand this. And Isaiah 17 could be really the trigger point for Ezekiel 38, where Israel's getting desperate. They can't do any strikes. They can't take out missile and weapon factories inside Lebanon because of the S-300, because of the Russians in the area. They know they can't go up against them, maybe. It's a speculation. And maybe Israel goes in with a nuclear weapon on Damascus to try and decapitate the Syrian regime once and for all. Maybe this is their last-ditch effort. I don't know. Why else would Israel go and completely obliterate Damascus, which has never been destroyed, and it's the longest never destroyed city, basically in the history of the planet. Why would Israel go and do that? That's all in Isaiah 17. You can go read it for yourself. I think Isaiah 17 is really the maybe the last hook in the jaw for Russia to say, okay, now we're going to go against Israel. We have to do it now because we're allied with Syria, with Bashar Assad, with Iran, and they've done this strike. I think that's the sequence of events. Economic collapse. Isaiah 17 happens because Israel is desperate and getting desperate. Ezekiel 38 happens where Russia overruns Israel, and then finally the Jews have to call upon God, and God comes back and saves them from utter destruction. So I think these things, he's going to show his power, but the 7-year tribulation still needs to occur because the Jews still need to fully recognize Jesus Christ as Messiah, and they haven't yet, and that's the 7-year tribulation is for the salvation of the Jewish nation, as J.D. Farrag always states it. So I think all these things kind of line up. I mean, we're going to see. I don't know if I'm 100% correct, but I think we're going to see in the next couple of years if this is actually an accurate timeline or not. And it's exciting to see from one point of view. It's also sad to see because there's a lot of people who need Jesus Christ. And if you're listening to this video today and you don't know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, make sure you ask Him into your heart. Ask for the forgiveness of your sins. He died on a cross 2,000 years ago for my sin and your sin. He's coming back soon. The Bible foretells all these events that are occurring. We don't know the exact timing of it for a reason, because then we would go and do other things accordingly, or we would put off salvation because we knew when the Lord was going to return. So there's reasons why God doesn't give us a date and time for many of these. Other items are very specific. But I think these things are coming down the pipe quick, and we are in the last days. Guys, I'll leave it there. This will be the only video, I think, for today. Stay tuned to the stock markets. I think there's significant things happening. Let's go back to the stock markets real quick. See where we're at. 372 points down. Dow futures. Basically look for a 400-point drop. It's going to be a wild ride on the stock markets today. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video.